I welcome you all in our today's session, that is hysteric functions part 2. In our previous video, we have seen the 8 puzzle problem. Also, we have seen the effect of heuristic accuracy on performance and the generating admissible heuristics from relaxed problems. In this session, we are going to discuss about the generating admissible heuristics from subproblems, which is also known as the pattern database. Admissible heuristics can also be derived from the solution cost of a subproblem of a given problem. Figure shows a 8 puzzle instance and its subproblem. This 8 puzzle problem we have seen in our previous video also. Here a typical instance of 8 puzzle is provided. The start state and the goal state is provided here. By sliding the number squares to the blank space, we can arrange the provided number spaces or provided number squares in the way provided in the goal state. So the solution is of about 26 steps long. Now here in this figure, a subproblem of the 8 puzzle instance is given, which is shown in the previous figure. The task here is to get tiles 1, 2, 3, 4 into their correct positions without worrying about what happens to the other tiles. So here we have to just arrange the tiles 1, 2, 3, 4 in the provided manner. So we have nothing to worry about the remaining number tiles. The subproblem involves getting tiles 1, 2, 3, 4 into their correct positions. Clearly, the cost of the optimal solution of this subproblem is a lower bound on the cost of the complete problem. It turns out to be more accurate than Manhattan distance in some cases. The idea behind pattern database is to store these exact solution costs for every possible subproblem instance. In our example, every possible configuration of the 4 tiles and the blank. The locations of the other 4 tiles are irrelevant for the purpose of solving the subproblem, but moves of those tiles do count towards the cost. When we compute an admissible heuristic HDB for each complete state encountered during a search simply by looking up the corresponding subproblem configuration in the database. The database itself is constructed by searching back 13 from the goal and recording the cost of each new pattern encountered. The expense of this search is amortized over many subsequent problem instances. The choice of 1, 2, 3, 4 is fairly arbitrary. We could also construct databases for 5, 6, 7, 8, for 2, 4, 6, 8 and so on. Each database yields an admissible heuristic, and these heuristics can be combined as explained earlier by taking the maximum value. A combined heuristic of this kind is much more accurate than the Manhattan distance. The number of nodes generated when solving 15 puzzles can be reduced by a factor of 1000. So one might wonder whether the heuristic obtained from the 1, 2, 3, 4 database and the 5, 6, 7, 8 would be added, since the two subproblems seems not to overlap. Would this still give an admissible heuristic? The answer is no, because the solution of the 1, 2, 3, 4 subproblem and the 5, 6, 7, 8 subproblem for a given state will almost certainly share some moves. It is unlikely that 1, 2, 3, 4 can move into place without touching 5, 6, 7, 8 and vice versa. But what if we don't count those moves? That is, we record not the total cost of solving the 1, 2, 3, 4 subproblem, but just the number of moves involving 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it is easy to see that the sum of the two costs is still a lower bound on the cost of solving the entire problem. This is the idea behind disjoint pattern databases. With such databases, it is possible to solve random 15 puzzles in a few milliseconds. The number of nodes generated to reduce a factor of 10,000 compared with the use of Manhattan distance. For 24 puzzles, a speed up of roughly a factor of 1,000,000 can be obtained. Disjoint pattern databases work for sliding tile puzzles because the problem can be divided up in such a way that each move affects only one subproblem, because only one tile is moved at a time. For a problem such as Rubik's Cube, this kind of subdivision is difficult because each move affects 8 or 9 of the 26 cubies. More general ways of defining additive admissible heuristics have been proposed that do apply on Rubik's Cube, but they have not yielded a heuristic better than the best non-additive heuristics for the problem. Learning heuristics from experiences. A heuristic function h of n is supposed to estimate the cost of a solution beginning from the state at the node n. How could an agent construct such a function? One solution was given in the preceding sections, namely to devise relaxed problems for which an optimal solution can be found easily. Another solution is to learn from experience. So what is meant by experience here? So experience here means solving lots of 8 puzzles, for instance. Each optimal solution of an 8 puzzle problem provides examples from which h of n can be learned. Each example consists of a state from the solution path and the actual cost of the solution from that point. From these examples, a learning algorithm can be used to construct a function h of n that can predict solution costs for other states that arise during search. So, inductive learning methods work best when supplied with features of a state that are relevant to predicting the state's value rather than with just the raw state description. For example, the feature number of misplaced tiles might be helpful in predicting the actual distance of a state from the goal. Let's call this feature as x1 of n. We could take 100 randomly generated 8 puzzle configurations and gather statistics on their actual solution costs. We might find that when x1 of n is 5, the average solution cost is around 40, and so on. Given these data, the value of x1 can be used to predict h of n. We can use several features. A second feature, x2 of n, might be number of pairs of adjacent tiles that are not adjacent in a goal state. How should x1 of n and x2 of n be combined to predict h of n? A common approach is to use a linear combination, that is, h of n is equal to c1 into x1 of n plus c2 into x2 of n. The constants c1 and c2 are adjusted to give the best fit to the actual data on solution costs. One accepts both C1 and C2 to be positive because misplaced tiles and incorrect adjacent pairs make the problem harder to solve. Notice that this heuristic does satisfy the condition that h of n is equal to 0 for goal states, but it is not necessarily admissible or consistent. Here we introduced methods that an agent can use to select actions in environments that are deterministic, observable, static, and completely known. In such cases, the agent can construct sequences of actions that achieve its goals. This process is called as the search. Before an agent can start searching from solutions, a goal must be identified and a well-defined problem must be formulated. A problem consists of 5 parts: the initial state, state of actions, a transition model describing the result of those actions, a goal test function, and a path cost function. The environment of the problem is represented by a state space. A path through the state space from the initial state to a goal state is a solution. Search algorithms treat states and actions as atomic, where they do not consider any internal structure they might possess. A general tree search algorithm considers all possible paths to find a solution, whereas a graph search algorithm avoids consideration of redundant paths. Search algorithms are judged on the basis of completeness, optimality, time complexity, and space complexity. This complexity depends on B, that is the branching factor in the state space, and D, which is nothing but the depth of the shallowest solution. Uninformed search methods have access only to the problem definition. The basic algorithm are as follows. Breadth first search expands the shallowest nodes first. It is complete, optimal for unit step cost, but has exponential space complexity. The second method is an uniform cost search, which expands the node with lowest path cost g of n and is optimal for general step costs. The third search method is depth first search, which expands the deepest unexpanded node first. It is neither complete nor optimal, but has linear space complexity. Depth limited search adds a depth bound. The iterative deepening search calls depth first search with increasing depth limits until a goal is found. It is complete, optimal for unit step cost, has time complexity comparable to breadth first search, and has linear space complexity. The bidirectional search can enormously reduce time complexity, but it is not always applicable and many require too much space. So all these are the uninformed search methods. What are the informed search methods? Informed search methods may have access to a heuristic function h of n that estimates the cost of a solution from n. The generic best first search algorithm selects a node for expansion according to an evaluation function. Greedy best first search expands nodes with minimal h of n. It is not optimal but is often efficient. The A* search expands nodes with minimal f of n is equal to g of n plus h of n. A* is complete and optimal provided that h of n is admissible for tree search or consistent for graph search. the space complexity of A star is still prohibitive. The recursive best first search, which is also known as RBFS, and SMA star, that is simplified memory bounded A star, are robust, optimal search algorithms that use limited amounts of memory. Given enough time, they can solve problems that A star cannot solve because it runs out of memory. The performance of heuristic search algorithms depends on the quality of the heuristic function. One can sometimes construct good heuristics by relaxing the problem definition by storing pre-computed solution costs for subproblems in a pattern database, or by learning from experience with the problem class. So here in this video we have summarized the solving problems by searching. I hope this is helpful for your further studies. Thank you.